Good evening, everybody. I'm Old Dead Man, your host. Doggone it, Gaijin has put out a dev team response to questions from the YouTube community and content creators. So, this is the first crack at the feedback they'd been requesting and ending a couple of days ago. I've kind of scanned through this already. I'm going to try and quickly bip through it as quick as I can here and just hit the high points and give you an idea of what's in this Q&A and give you an idea where it's at so you can jump on it later. So let's jump straight into this and see what we can see. First part's just an intro saying, hey, we've received tons of feedback. We're analyzing it all. We're looking at it all. We're buried in it all. And here's some answers to start off with. Question. We're concerned about the comparatively low efficiency of the post-penetration effect of low-caliber heat rounds. And they are planning to rework certain aspects of the shape charge jets for lower caliber rounds. And the idea is that, yes, they do a very narrow post-penetration jet, but probably the guys that are in that jet should not be surviving to keep loading the gun. You know, so they're looking at that and hoping to make it more consistent. Light vehicles might be very die hard, being able to absorb 3 to 4 rounds because fuses are unable to arm. And this one I'm going to read straight out. This is a big topic for players and a common talking point inside our team as well. There are several possibilities we're considering, but they will take some time to develop. We're keenly aware of this issue, though, and will introduce a solution if and when we can. So no promises on that. And as they say, no armor is best armor. Thanks, Fly Daily. So this one's a keep an eye on, but don't expect any immediate changes. I'd be interested to see if they can come up with anything useful. Is it possible to make 3D decorations physical so that they can detach from vehicles when hit? Great idea, they said. We'll look into how complicated this would be to implement, and if it is indeed possible, we'll aim to make them destructible and prone to catching fire as well. As long, I might add, they can do that, both those things, and in fact, I'm all for it. But they better not make it so you have to use an FPE because you stuck a piece of decorator on your tank. That's all I'm going to say on that. Except for one other thing. If I could blow those stupid flashy lights off the top of tanks near me, I would totally do it all day long. Hate those things. They're annoying. Is it possible to refine the reloading mechanics when the loader is knocked out during a gun misfire, then the reload cycle starts again? Absolutely, they say. And some of this they're trying to work on is that maybe when you reach a certain percentage of the reload cycle, if your loader gets killed right then, it won't actually reset it entirely. So, for instance, they say if you get to 80% there, well, the round's just sitting there in the breech. It just needs to be rammed home. So you don't have to restart the whole reload. And if it's a two-part piece, they might be able to set it up so that, you know, if one part's in, the person who picks up only has to pick up from that spot and continue loading. So all good. I like that idea. I get really ticked off when people manage to pop my loader, even if I've tried to angle and move things around. So all good, especially on those long reload tanks. Do you plan to increase the mobility of heavy tanks and slow SPGs in the RB mode, like is in arcade? And the answer is no. Good. If you're going to take a heavy tank, you need to have the advantages, armor, and the disadvantages, speed, that heavy tank brings to you, especially in RB. Do you like the idea of giving free backups when purchasing top-tier premium vehicles? We do. Big surprise. You're spending money. They're giving you free stuff. Shocker. There are still turret desync bugs. It's a complicated issue, they say, but an important one. We're currently working on a fix. And then they followed up with, is it possible to get rid of the desync of server and client? And the answer is no. And there's a technical reason behind this. And they kind of address it pretty decently. And just, I'll leave that there. You can pause the video and take a look. It's a long answer. Check it out. Any chance to fix the bug spotting when vehicles are invisible for no reason? And they're saying this issue comes from the server's anti-cheat algorithms. And they're working on that as well, but it's not possible to maintain a perfect synchronization. So keep that in mind. There's not much they can do about it, is what they're saying, and still have a relatively relatively cheater-free server. Damage by excessive pressure needs more calibration, and also damage of high caliber shells of ground vehicles need to be increased. And the answer here is, please give us examples. They're happy to investigate them, but if you have a situation that you believe it should have done more, please provide them with the replay. Please fix the bug that doesn't allow you to turn over the tank if it's upside down and lies on top of the turret. Ah, yes, it's a very rare but annoying when it occurs. We'll look into a fix. Thank you. Just make it so you don't end up, you can't actually roll on. You make your turret actually part of the tank model so it'll lean against that instead. Do you have plans to create a tutorial on mechanics of top-tier vehicles, such as anti-aircraft missile systems, drones, etc., with an option to customize controls for such mechanics? Yes, we do. So, tutorials for some of the advanced systems. Awesome. Due to the difference in vehicle generations, there are big problems on rank 5, particularly on BR 7 to 8, where there are tanks with APF-SDS and stabilizers and without them. And they say this is a really abrupt change here, and they'll pay special attention to this area. They have not promised anything, but at least are aware of it. I'll be interested to see if they actually deliver a solution there. Think of this Q&A as a bit of a checklist. Hunter-killer feature is toxic. Please add a 2 to 3 second delay before the commander can take over. And they say, delay here would make sense. We'll consider it. Currently, graphics can noticeably influence player skill. And they give some examples here. Is it possible to brighten up the shadows and lose some greenery and decorations? And they answer, it's a tough question that requires more complex solutions. Basically, they don't want to end up in a situation where your top flight, top tier players end up with a different set of graphics than your regular average Joe. So they want to make it universal, and they don't want to have that type of delineation. Helicopter, PvE, too long, too hard, too stock. And they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Remove volumetric damage. It makes certain tanks too well defended. Track fenders and side skirts absorbing hits. And basically they're saying the volumetric damage is more accurate. However, there are still aspects that cannot be made perfect across the board. And they're asking again for reports and playbacks. So send them some replays with examples where the volumetric armor is causing problems instead of letting you kill your enemies. Air sim float spawn plane, air sim float plane spawns. Dang it, that's a tongue twister. And they're saying instead of spawning way back, these slow planes should be able to spawn closer. And they say, we'll think about it. I would like to see if War Thunder Naval Arcade could be made a bit more arcadey to attract more people to the mode. Faster range finding, which ammo to shoot, etc. So they're maybe looking at some more changes to make arcade naval a little bit more arcadey. Attack drones, they're complaining about them. They're hard to hit and they're hard to kill. And they've gathered a bunch of examples and they're looking at moving them up to a higher BR, where they can be more easily countered by advanced AA systems. Good. I kind of mentioned this at one point in time that the American Reaper drones, oh my heavens, those things are enormous. They're bigger than a small aircraft, a regular aircraft. And so they should be easy to lock onto and kill. Suggestion to stop helicopters and other aircraft from firing their weapons after they're considered dead by the game. And they come back to, they're going to think about it. However, they like the idea of the last ditch, suicidal, I'm going to die, so I'm going to take you with me. So I admit I kind of like that, but I also see the other side of that equation. Suggestion to allow phasing through teammates at the start of the match in ground, kind of like the way Air Realistic does it. And they're concerned about exploits, people deliberately ending up in the same spot when that protection wears off. Other items, add the ability to report racists, homophobes, and similar to customer support. Good idea. We'll add an easier way for those instances. There we go. Now we're moving on to matchmaking. Please add more maps to the top tier AirRB, even smaller maps. Some maps are very rare. They say they have 10 maps at the BR, and they'll be working on that as well. We'll aim to add more maps to this rating. The big problem is the size of maps on AirRB. Prop planes thrown onto a sim map, for instance. Remove the large maps from AirRB on low and medium tiers. And they agree with that. They are going to implement a way of displaying which maps appear at which BRs. That's kind of cool. And make some adjustments to those appearances. They'd also have asked for an increase in the chance of being the maximum available BR vehicle. And they say there's really nothing they can do about that. Only 4 players get that in each match. So, there you go. I would actually solve this by making the matchmaker try and match on BR for a certain amount of time, and then 0.3 above and below, and then 0.7 above and below, and then 1 above and below after certain periods. That's my thought, but they aren't saying that. They're just saying that there's not much they can do about it at this point. Add an unlimited amount of bands or 5 bands. And the answer to this one is we already have a problem with this where certain maps never get seen. And adding more bands will make it even harder, and it'll be harder to overcome the queue times. Add some way to vote for maps and map preferences. And they're going to think about that some more. They're willing, they say. Add BR limitations for each map and show it to players. Good idea. So they're looking at that very closely. My biggest / worst problem in War Thunder is maps in Ground RB that I don't want to play. Small maps in top tier battles, etc. They say they don't like all of the maps at the high ranks as well, although players' opinions differ. They're going to introduce a way to show the BR limitations. I kind of mentioned that already before. Missions and locations. In Tank RB, we often get battle mode with points already captured, and that demotivates the players from moving. I think this mode should go. These scenarios can foster a more sedentary style of gameplay. We'll probably reduce the chance of these maps appearing in the rotation and likely remove some. Thank you. I don't like battle mode. Battle mode, not fun. Make it go away, please. That's my opinion, obviously. Your mileage may vary. Question. I'd like the developers to manage the maps in a way so that modern vehicles won't appear in World War II locations. They say they partially agree, and they're going to look at removing the most obvious elements from these maps that relate to the time frame. They've kind of done that already by removing the dead tanks from many of them and replacing them with basically lumps of dirt. But there's still a lot that puts it very specific to the time frame. Berlin being the example. They certainly don't need that specific amount of destruction. So maybe a more modern version of Berlin for higher tier tanks would be pretty awesome. Do you plan to exclude night missions from rotation in case the player doesn't have night vision and thermal sight modules, or maybe introduce an option to disable those missions? This one's big. We have decided to make night battles optionally available. We'll announce exactly how this will be implemented a bit later. That's amazing. I thought night battles were going to be a permanent thing forever. And I hated the fact that I had, no thermals on those tanks in those night battles. So they're going to make it optional, and they'll determine how later. I'll be watching for that one. Collision models are annoying, and they're sometimes jarring. Please send examples. It'll be great to increase the duration of session creation to increase the number of players in battles and make them more intense. Waiting 20 seconds longer to end up with a bigger battle would be worth it. They're going to think about it. No universal solution. Are there any plans to additionally reward the top 5 players at the end of the battle? They do have plans, but they're concerned about griefing because of it, European province. The city part is well done. The open terrain has got bugs. They're aware of the problems. They're going to work on it. Surroundings of Volokolamsk. Large open location with unused space. Flank is clear. Then they think that it's only worth it to have the small version. There's certainly a large location with a lot of empty space. they have changed the rotation, so it's only got above 8.7 to 9.7. Red Desert. Huge spaces with shots from cover on the top of rocks. Removed from rotation. And they say at the moment the map's only available for 9.7 and above. And they are going to keep an eye on its overall popularity. El Alamein. Positions on tops of the cliffs make it difficult to play. You're right, we'll fix them. Battle of Hurtgen Forest. Larger version, lower activity. Return the old version with 3 city capture points. They said they don't see a decrease in activity in this arrangement, but the capture points really do need redone. Mozdok Battle. The location is either for fast tanks or standing at one point. And it's kind of a mess there. It's possible we'll remove it. The mobility of the tanks that see this map do make its layout quite unsuitable. So Mozdok may get removed. Fields of Poland. Looking at maybe removing some of the forests around the edges of the map and replacing them with fields to deter players from focusing on the outskirts. No. Giving you more wide open area is not useful for many light tanks that are trying to move around and pull off a flank. Not a good idea. Port Novorossiysk, domination. The teams capture their points being fully defended and then meet up in front of a huge open area that makes them afraid to advance, so they stick to the corridors. They're asking for a full rework. They actually see the points, but they disagree from their data and heat maps and say that once you've broken behind the enemy lines, you've got them pretty well, over a barrel. Sinai, great map, but positions on spawn points get in the way. It's hard to get to the player who camps there. They'll look into it. Ardennes, a lot of excess space, but they say the routes are often utilized. Poland, abandoned factory in Eastern Europe. Good examples of maps, they say. They'll try to introduce more maps along these lines. Vietnam, could you partially drain the swamp? It's possible, and there's a good point in this one. And they'd like to give a thank you to all of their players that submitted comments and suggestions. So this is at least a good start. What do you think of the comments of the comments they've made, the thoughts they've expressed? Let me know in the comments below. There's some cautiously optimistic parts. There's some parts I don't agree with, but then I am just one person. So let me know what you think. Put it in the comments and go ahead and let Gaijin know what you think. Get on the forums and let him know. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in War Thunder.